5.
Madam Clerk.
Please rise as you are able. I now call this meeting of City Council to order.
We acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe people. The Anishinaabe include the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. We're dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect with all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. You may be seated. Welcome to our virtual City Council meeting. In accordance with the public health guidance surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic, Council is continuing to practice physical distancing. Members of Council, the Executive Management Team, and the City Clerk are participating via video conference, and members of the Senior Leadership Team who have items on tonight's agenda are not visible but are available to answer any questions to help Council with our deliberations tonight. The first item of business on the agenda is confirmation of the minutes for October 26th, 2020 and October 29th, 2020. Those were City Council meetings. They have been circulated. Are there any corrections to the minutes, members of Council? Seeing none, the minutes are adopted as printed and circulated. We have no awards and recognition matters on tonight's agenda or reports from officers, deputations, tax applications, or communications, which brings us straight to the committee reports. Deputy Mayor Ward, I believe you have the motions.
I do. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section A of General Committee Report dated November 2nd, 2020 be adopted.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that the Committee of the Whole report dated October 26th, 2020 be received. Sorry, I have received on the motion form. Is it received or adopted? It's received. Okay. Thank you. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor, please indicate. Any opposed? None. That carries. General Committee report from November 2nd, Deputy Mayor Ward.
Move myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section B of the General Committee Report dated November 2nd, 2020 be adopted.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section A of the General Committee Report dated November 2nd, 2020 be adopted. These were the consent items: the investigation of implementing a bike or scooter share pilot program, strategies to advance active transportation mode share, the Economic Recovery Action Plan, and parking restrictions item for Tomlin Court, Dixon Court, and the north side of McMillan Court. Comments or questions on Section A? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor, please indicate. Are any opposed? None. That carries. Section B, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section C of the General Committee Report dated November 2nd, 2020 be received.
Still looking for B.
Well, no, that was okay. Not in the order I've got. Just a second. Oh, okay. That committee. Okay. Anyways, I think maybe I read the first one wrong. Maybe that was the one that it got off track. So, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section B of the General Committee Report dated November 2nd, 2020 be adopted.
All right, moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section B of the General Committee Report dated November 2nd, 2020 be adopted. This is the request of the provincial government to reverse the proposal to remove the ranked ballot option. Comments or questions on Section B? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor, please indicate. None opposed, that carries. Section C, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section C of the General Committee Report dated November 2nd, 2020 be received.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section C of the General Committee Report from November 2nd be received. This is the item that was withdrawn about the addressing policy. Comments or questions? Seeing none, those in favor of Section C, please indicate. Any opposed? None. That carries. Section D, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section D of the General Committee Report dated November 2nd, 2020 be received.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section D of the General Committee Report dated November 2nd, 2020 be received. It's a confidential potential acquisition of property matter on Wellington Street. Councillor Jim Harris, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Sorry for the delay. Just wanted to make sure I noted my potential conflict of interest as I own property in the area that is in question.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Has Councillor Jim Harris's potential conflict been recorded?
Yes, Mayor Lehman, it has.
Thank you very much. Comments, questions, or amendments on Section D? Okay, seeing none, I will call the question. Those in favor, it's to receive the report, Section D. Those in favor, please indicate. Any opposed to receiving the report? One. That carries. Section E, please. Deputy Mayor.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section E of the General Committee Report dated November 2nd, 2020 be adopted.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Rob Thompson, that Section E of the General Committee Report dated November 2nd, 2020 be adopted. This is with regards to the potential acquisition of property on Wellington Street. Councillor Jim Harris.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Again, I will declare my potential conflict as I own property in this area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, has Councillor Jim Harris's potential interest in Section E been recorded?
Yes, Mayor Lehman, it has.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kungle.
Through your worship, I would like to table an amendment to the motion
Okay, go ahead.
that the following be added to the current motion as tabled. So a second section that reads as follows: that representatives from the County of Simcoe Human Services Department be invited to provide a presentation to City Council concerning the status of potential supportive housing projects and sites in the Barrie area that are under consideration, and that this presentation be provided in advance of any City of Barrie property acquisitions or sales for housing opportunities.
Okay, thank you very much. It's moved by Councillor Kungle, seconded by Deputy Mayor Ward, that we add a paragraph 2 to Section E, and that would read that representatives from the County of Simcoe Human Services Department be invited to provide a presentation to City Council concerning the status of potential supportive housing projects and sites in the Barrie area that are under consideration, and that this presentation be provided in advance of any City of Barrie property acquisitions or sales for housing purposes. Would you care to speak to that, Councillor Congo?
Yes, thank you. It was recently that there was a very informative publicly available session with County of Simcoe staff on their budget for 2021. An aspect of that update, which was held on Thursday, does talk a bit about the human services aspects, which include social housing. So considering that we've had a range of different conversations on housing, and that I believe we have discussed opportunities to look at opportunities to put in affordable housing and social housing, I think it would be an opportune time before any decisions are made on properties, be it to sell or to acquire, that we understand the current state of how the city of Barrie may rank or may be positioned with the County of Simcoe as the provider for social housing.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Congo. Councillor Thompson on the amendment.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Through you to maybe the clerk. Can we separate these two items if this amendment passed?
Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Thompson, yes, we could put a motion on the floor that they both be voted on as separate motions.
So I would need to put a motion on the floor to have these, and then we'd vote on that?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Thompson, yes.
I'll send you an email. I guess I need to send it because of being in council. It needs to be written.
So this would just be a motion to separate the two paragraphs of section E and reintroduce the second paragraph as section F. Is that correct, Madam Clerk?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, yes, we can do it that way.
I will support the amendment because I think that it would give us a good insight of what we're doing going forward. And I just, like, I voiced my opinion already. I'm not interested in going down the path of the original motion. And I think the memo we received today makes me lean a lot more that way. So, thanks.
Okay, so just procedurally, members of council, we'll deal with the amendment. If the amendment carries, then Councillor Thompson, if you wanted to introduce the motion to separate the two, then we would reintroduce that as section F, and that will allow council to vote on the two paragraphs separately. Does that work? Okay, any others who wish to comment on the amendment that's currently on the floor? Okay, if none, then I will call the question on the amendment. So you can vote in favor of this, and then we will separate it, and we would be voting again as a separate section. Correct, Madam Clerk? Yeah, okay. So those in favor of the amendment, please indicate. Okay, any opposed to the amendment? Okay, none. So the amendment carries. So I'll now take a motion to separate this new paragraph and reintroduce it as section F. And that would be yourself, Councillor Thompson. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Ripma? Madam Clerk, do you need anything else? Okay. Anybody want to comment on separating them? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. This is on the motion to separate the two. Those in favor, please indicate. Okay, none opposed, that carries. So section F will be reintroduced in a moment, which is the amendment. That means we are back on the original motion. A little weird procedurally, but that's how it works. And so on the original motion, which is section E, as printed of the general committee report, does anybody wish to comment or any further amendments? None? Okay, then I will call the question. Those in favor of section E.
Recorded vote, please.
Okay, a recorded vote's been requested. Madam Clerk, please conduct the vote.
Starting with you, Mayor Lehman.
Yes.
Councillor Rima.
Yes.
Councillor Aylwin.
No.
Councillor Kungle.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Ward.
Yes.
Councillor Thompson.
So,
Councillor Natalie Harris,
No.
Councillor Harvey,
No.
Councillor Morales,
Yes.
Councillor McCann,
No.
I have it as
Motion loses
5-5.
five,
Yep. Okay, so that was the original section E. We now have section F, which is still relevant, separate as a standalone, I would say. Do we need to we do need to actually introduce section F now. So I'm aware there probably was not a motion form prepared for that. Deputy Mayor Ward, are you prepared, and Councillor Thompson, to second introducing section F to get it on the floor?
I guess, yeah, I could. Would it be moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Kungle that section F of General Committee Report dated November 2nd, 2020 be amended or be adopted?
It would be, and Councillor Kungle can second it if she consents.
I consent. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Madam Clerk, do you need us to hold on at all, or are you good with this? Okay. Councillor Natalie Harris, go ahead on section F.
Sorry, I'm having trouble getting my iLegislate up. Can you just read for sure what we're voting on right now?
Sure. So section F is the amendment that was just passed as paragraph 2 a minute ago. So that representatives from the County of Simcoe Human Services Department be invited to provide a presentation to City Council concerning the status of potential supportive housing projects and sites in the Barrie area that are under consideration, and that this presentation be provided in advance of any City of Barrie property acquisitions or sales for housing opportunities.
Thank you. Sorry for making you have to read all that again.
No, not at all. That's fine. I probably should have done it in the first place. So that's section F. Councillor Jim Harris.
Sorry, Mayor Lehman, thank you. Just maybe through you to the clerk around process, now that it's not about a certain area, am I allowed to vote on this?
Yeah, this has no reference to the particular address or property under consideration.
Great. Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate it.
For sure. Any further comments, questions on section F, members of council? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor of section F? Any opposed? None. That carries unanimously. Okay, that completes that general committee report. Deputy Mayor Ward, November 9th, please.
I may need some help from the city clerk here because I've got a couple of motions, I guess, prepared in advance. So could it be moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Thompson that the general committee report dated November 9th, 2020 be received or adopted? Adopted.
So yeah, three, Mayor Lehman. It would be section B of the general committee report, because section A would be the notes that aren't completed yet. So those will be on the next council agenda. It's just that we want to deal with the motion that was passed tonight, because it'll be happening in 2 weeks. So it would just be that section B of the general committee report dated November 9th be adopted.
Okay, do you want me to read it again?
Sure.
That moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section B of general committee report dated November 9th, 2020 be adopted.
Okay, members of council, comments, questions, amendments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor of section B, please indicate. Are any opposed? None. That carries unanimously. Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor Ward. And yes, just procedurally, the section A, which would be receiving the report with the notes, will come in due course. That's the notes for the record to receive the minutes of the meeting. Okay, so, or excuse me, to receive the report of the meeting, not the minutes. I'll be clear on that. Okay, there are no items of deferred business on the agenda. It brings us to the direct motion that is printed on the agenda. Councillor Harvey, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Can I just put the direct motion on the floor as printed and then go forward with the amendment then?
If you could read the original motion, and then I'll recognize you to move an amendment.
Okay, sounds good. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section 24.5 of the Council and Committee Member Code of Conduct be amended to read as follows. An organization, employee, member, or member of the public having reasonable grounds to believe that a member has breached this code may proceed with a complaint. Complaints must be submitted no more than 6 months after the alleged violation occurring. No action will be taken on a complaint received beyond these deadlines. 2, that this amendment to the Council and Committee Member Code of Conduct come into effect, and then there's a blank, which I'll have an amendment for.
Okay, thank you. It's moved by Councillor Gary Harvey and seconded by Councillor Rob Thompson that section 24.5 of the Council and Committee Member Code of Conduct be amended to read as follows. An organization, employee, member, or member of the public having reasonable grounds to believe that a member has breached this code may proceed with a complaint. Complaints must be submitted no more than 6 months after the alleged violation occurring. No action will be taken on a complaint received beyond these deadlines. 2, that the amendment to the Council and Committee Member Code come into effect on a date to be specified. So the motion is on the floor. Did you have an amendment, Councillor Harvey?
Yes, I do, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that the direct motion 13.1 concerning the amendment to the Council and Committee Code of Conduct be amended at the end of paragraph 2 by inserting the word today after the word effect.
Okay, so the amendment is to add the word today to paragraph 2 on the amendment. Members of council, comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question on the amendment, which is to add the word today. Those in favor of the amendment, please indicate. Are any opposed? None. That carries. On the main motion as amended, further comments, questions, or amendments? Councillor Riepma.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to sort of suggest that the last part of the sentence doesn't make any is plural, and it should be singular. Because there is only one deadline proposed. So I'm suggesting that it's just a bit of wordsmithing. My problem with this proposal is that we have already asked our staff and the Integrity Commissioner to work on our code of conduct. And I'm not so sure that we should be doing sort of piecemeal bits and pieces here by motions in council. My concern is that we always run the risk of unintended consequences. And it may well be that when our Integrity Commissioner has a look at it, or whoever's working on the revised code will say, you know, it shouldn't be 6 months, it should be a year, or it should be 9 months, or it should be 2 years. So I'm reluctant to support this simply for those reasons. I don't think we should be doing piecemeal adjustments to our code. We've already asked some learned people to do some work on it, and I'm happy to wait until they come back to us. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Riepma. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to clarify some of Councillor Riepma's questions there, it's not necessarily piecemealing this. A few weeks ago, we did pass the motion for our staff in legislative services to work with the Integrity Commissioner. This was an area that we recognized as an issue with because our current wording restricts it to a 6-week time frame. And that's what this is removing. So through consultation with the Integrity Commissioner, this is the wording that was provided to me by the Integrity Commissioner directly and to the clerk. And that's why we're moving forward with this now, because this was a key component of the code that we identified as an issue. It is consistent with many other municipalities, even with the 6-week window. When I was diving into it, it seemed like it was kind of split across the board as to whether the 6-week window was included in the wording or not. However, in further discussions with the Integrity Commission, this would be her recommendations moving forward, would be to remove that 6-week window. So that way complaints can come forward up to that 6-month period. And there's no municipality that I'm aware of that goes outside of that 6-month window. So that's why we're moving this forward now. It's a problem that we're aware of. And it's a problem that needs to be fixed sooner than later. And the Integrity Commissioner is very much supportive of us moving forward in this fashion, just on this one section.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Harvey. Deputy Mayor Ward.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I never had a problem with it. I just curious about two things. One is just a clarification. It comes into effect today. Does that mean things going forward? In other words, it's the 6 months retroactive from today, or from 6 months from today complaints? And I guess I'm asking the mover of the motion.
Sure, Councillor Harvey.
So this particular wording would be us moving forward from this date onward. As in previous discussions, that issue got raised, and that's why I went back to Ms. Craig for a second time to confirm what type of wording she would like to see, and that's how we've got the wording that we have this evening. So it would be from this date forward, and it would not be a retroactive scenario.
Okay, and second question, again, for the mover of the motion is, I'm not sure when you talk to Ms. Craig. I mean, I know we've had this code of conduct for 10 years, and I'm not familiar with a single case of where somebody didn't file a complaint within 6 weeks and it became a problem. Doesn't mean we can't amend it, but was Ms. Craig aware of any complaints that have taken more than 12 weeks to come in, or whatever it was before? Like this new deadline of 6 months, have we had any case where somebody waited more than the required time to put a request in for an Integrity Commissioner investigation?
I asked that one of the clerk.
I mean, there was sort of a sense of urgency here, and I'm just wondering if we've ever had a case where somebody took that long to file something.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Deputy Mayor Ward, I'm not aware of anything, but I mean, I would have to defer and get an answer from Ms. Craig.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Okay, any others who wish to speak to the motion as amended? Okay, seeing none, I will call the question. Please indicate those in favor of the motion. Direct motion as amended. Opposed? 1. That carries. Okay, thank you, members of council. That brings us to our presentation tonight. We have one presentation this evening. It is from the Barrie Public Library concerning the Hawley Community Library. And I'd like to now call on Lauren Jessup, Chief Executive Officer of the Barrie Public Library, and Austin Mitchell, Chair of the Barrie Public Library Board, to provide the presentation. Ms. Jessup, Mr. Mitchell, welcome back to Barrie City Council, and the floor is yours for the presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Lehman and members of council. It's really nice to see you all again. Thank you so much for having us. I'm just going to share my slides here. Oh, hang on. Maybe.
There we go.
It's hard to see. Hang on, there we go. Can everybody see that? Okay, I think we're good.
We can. Go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you. We're here tonight to share with you an opportunity that will allow us to expand library services into the Hawley neighborhood. The pandemic may have postponed our original request for a community library in this neighborhood, but it hasn't diminished the need for library services in this area. Libraries continue to be a smart investment that strengthen community connections, and we appreciate the opportunity to share with council how a library in Hawley will connect neighbors and create opportunities in this growing community. When we last spoke with council, seems like a long time ago, we shared our long-term plans for libraries in the Hewitt and Salem community centers. We heard your enthusiasm for a library in Holly at that time. The Holly Community Library will provide library services where intensification is happening and where there is an immediate and growing need. For years, library staff members have found creative ways to bring the library to Holly, but storytime in the park may not be enough. We're known for being creative and flexible, but think of what more we could do if we had a dedicated community space. A library in this neighborhood strongly supports council's goal to build strong neighborhoods. Public libraries encourage human connection, inspire community participation, and shape the way that people interact. As we recover from the pandemic, a library could really help build the social infrastructure for a stronger Holly. Not only do our libraries provide free access to books, information, and other cultural materials, but they offer opportunities for all ages. Our welcoming spaces encourage companionship for older adults, provide early literacy resources for busy young families, language instruction for newcomers, collaborative learning opportunities for entrepreneurs, and inclusive public spaces for all citizens. The Library Board has noticed Council's commitment to shift government, and it's commendable. The library is here as one of your key partners to help address the root causes of complex social issues, such as low literacy. Low literacy rates are linked to poverty and poor health, and early exposure to language, whether that's through books, words, or songs, can help prevent problems related to low literacy and promote health and well-being. With over 6,000 children in Holly, a conveniently located community library is an essential element in developing these early literacy skills in children. Over the summer of 2019, we met Holly families in their parks and community spaces, and more than 900 residents shared their vision for a library in this neighborhood. The ideas and feedback we gathered during that consultation process, as well as what we're currently learning during the pandemic, have brought us to this updated business plan for the Holly Community Library. Residents had a lot to say about a library in their neighborhood. Families, small business owners, seniors, and youth are excited to use the library to access books and online information, to attend programs, to work, to study, and to use a computer right in their own neighborhood. They want their library to offer more opportunities to build community and foster family connections. We also heard that existing library locations are too far away, and residents in Wards 6 and 7 are more likely to visit a library if it was located near shopping or their workplace. A conveniently located location would certainly make it easier to fit more frequent library visits into residents' busy lives. If libraries are to build strong communities, they need to be in the heart of the community. As we look to recover from the pandemic, our patrons will return to their libraries and build back their lives and move forward. The need for programs that build family and interpersonal connections was noted during the open houses for our master facilities plan and in our community survey. Mayor Lehman, you noted this need for community connection when 2020 began, and given the last 6 months, it's now even more essential. With so many people communicating online during the pandemic, as we recover, human connection remains as important as ever. Programming at this branch will follow the successful formats currently offered downtown and at Painswick. Families and children are anticipated to be a strong target audience at this location.
The Holly Community Library proposal uses data to tell the story of the residents living in this neighborhood. Ward 7 alone accounts for about 16,000 people, and this area is primarily made up of middle-aged couples, families with children, and higher than average rates of single-parent homes. These residents currently travel more than 10 kilometers and cross the 400 to reach their nearest library location. In the letters of support received and provided to council, convenience is noted as a top priority for these busy families. A large percentage commuted for work prior to the pandemic and may now be looking for space to work remotely in the community. Requests for space to work and study are common since reopening our libraries, and we expect this need to grow. We have been following council closely, and in our discussions with city staff, we recognize the trend toward intensification over urban sprawl. There are hundreds of higher density residential units planned in Holly, units that will be home to thousands of new residents. Incorporating a conveniently accessible library into this growing area means residents won't have to travel across the city to access library services. A community library in Holly is an essential part of a complete community and addresses an immediate pressing need. Development of the Hewitt and Salem lands has been delayed, but is still part of the library's long-term plans. However, the citizens of Southwest Barrie deserve a library now. So here's the plan. The library has the opportunity to lease a space in an ideal location where we can provide local library services to Holly. With space limitations and economic factors in mind, we've scaled this project to meet current needs with the possibility of expansion in the future. A 4,500 square foot space is available in the Mapleton and Essa area. This would put the library in the heart of the community in a spot that is busy, walkable, and close to other amenities such as the Holly Rec Center and various schools. This boutique model may not provide 15,000 square feet of library space in Holly, as outlined in our master facilities plan, but it does provide convenient and ready access to library services for a community that has been waiting more than 10 years for a library in their neighborhood. If council approves this request, we could have a library up and running by early summer next year, at a time when citizens are turning to the library for support. This lease location would offer the benefits of the library now, with opportunities for growth as the neighborhood intensifies. The capital investment for this location is just over $1 million. This is a fraction of the capital required to build Painswick back in 2012, and will exclusively support the acquisition of library assets such as shelving, equipment, furniture, and collections. Improvements to the space may be negotiated into the cost of a lease of at least 5 years. We have confirmed with city staff that many of our capital costs, as well as the annual lease payment, can be covered by development charges. Anything not covered by DCs can be funded by the library through fundraised dollars. It is also important to note that our capital costs are for items like shelving, collections, and furniture that could come with us if we were to relocate to a larger space in the future. We have proactively prepared our organization for growth and the expansion of services. We have found efficiencies in our workflows, modernized our policies, removed barriers to access, and streamlined our staffing model. Efficiencies in the library's service delivery model will allow redeployment of staff to fill many of the Holly branch positions. Additional funds required to support staff at this location are estimated at $350,000. While we anticipate a community library in the Holly neighborhood to be very well attended, additional staff will be hired on a contract basis to allow us to fully identify the exact number of staff needed after opening. Some cost savings may also be achieved depending on timing of opening. However, exact amounts will not be known until the lease can be negotiated. We are prepared for and excited to grow Barrie's library system, and we're asking for council's support to provide expanded service to this neighborhood. To summarize, council has a real opportunity here to take advantage of a great space for lease in a busy, walkable area in the heart of the Holly neighborhood. The library has worked hard to find efficiencies and scale back this project to provide a great service at a reasonable price. Residents in the Holly neighborhood have been waiting for a library for more than 10 years, and we have an opportunity that will bring service to this neighborhood next year. Libraries are a smart investment and a key component of a complete community. Please support this initiative as we strive to increase access to library services in Barrie. Barrie Public Library will connect neighbors, create opportunities, and be positioned for growth in this leased space, becoming the heart of the community in 2021. Thank you.
Mr. Mitchell, thank you very much. And Ms. Jessup, thank you very much for the presentation. Questions from members of council? I'm sure there are some. Councillor Gary Harvey, Ward Council, let's start with you.
Thank you, Your Worship. First, I'd like to thank both Austin and Lauren for their presentation, and obviously one heck of a lot of work to get us to where you are today to finally be able to come before council and present. Obviously, we're in the midst of a pandemic, so I'm just kind of curious, like, why now? Like, I think a library is obviously very much needed, but why in the midst of a pandemic, and why should we act now?
Joseph.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Harvey. You know, the pandemic has really highlighted some inequalities in our communities. So there are people living in our neighborhoods who don't have access to the supports that they need to work and to study. And that became really apparent when the libraries were closed. And so despite the fact that we're in a pandemic, the need is really there for people to have that space where they can go outside of their home, they can do their remote work, they can study, they can access the resources that the library provides. And not only that, I mean, there is an opportunity for a great space. There's a spot right in the heart of this neighborhood. The library board has talked a lot about this branch and what we're looking for with this branch. And one of the things is really making sure that it's walkable, it's convenient, it's where people are already visiting. And, you know, there's lots of commuters living in this neighborhood, and they may find that they can also run some errands while they're coming to the library. Just that convenience factor is a real benefit, and there's an opportunity for us to act now.
Follow up, Your Worship.
Go ahead.
Just kind of curious, what do you envision to be in this branch? Is it going to be your typical bricks and mortar with just brooks, or do you envision other components to be involved?
Ms. Jessup.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Harvey. We've learned a lot of lessons through the pandemic, and one of those lessons has been our spaces need to be flexible. So this space, we're looking at some collections. There won't be a lot. We will rely on the resource library here downtown and at Painswick, so people will be able to place holds on a lot of the items that they're looking for. But what we're really looking for in this space is flexibility. So movable shelving, movable tables and chairs, no large banks of computers, instead looking at having laptops that people can borrow and sit wherever. So if we find ourselves in a situation where distancing is still required, or people just want to be on their own to do their work, we're making sure that we have those aspects covered. So it is a small, what we're calling a boutique library space, but I think we can fit the things in that the public is looking for, and that really is a focus on spaces to work, spaces to study, places for families to come and visit with their children.
Just one last question, Your Worship.
Sure.
Obviously, this is not just going to service Holly, it's going to service people in Ward 6, possibly a little bit into Ward 5. Do you think that the size of the space that you're looking at right now is going to suit the needs?
Ms. Jessup.
I can speak to that question through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Harvey. So as we mentioned, yes, the space is a fair bit smaller than the 15,000 square feet that we envisioned for this neighborhood. But that being said, we feel like this is an ideal location that we can provide really solid library services to these neighborhoods. And it also allows for the opportunities for growth in the future, whether we expand the location we're looking at, or whether we could expand into future developments in the area. But yes, although it is smaller, we feel like we can provide some great service to these residents that have been waiting for library service right in the walkable area that they can get to.
Great, thank you. That'll be the end of my questions to allow other members.
Thanks, Councillor Harvey. Councillor Kungle, I have you next on my list.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to Ms. Jessup and Mr. Mitchell. Thank you for that impressive I'd like to remark about being able to pivot in such a very strategic and smart way to still meet, what we're seeing as good data information from community needs in something that I think is quite reasonable. I'm hoping you could help me to appreciate when we talk about the operating dollars. With respects to, I think it was $851,000, $100,000 you're looking at. And that's really, there was some reference to contract staff. Can you speak at all to if there's use of volunteers or reliance on volunteers, or any way in which that budget from an operational, is that as lean as possible? I know when we've had conversations that you're coming to the table with a well-informed plan, but I wanted to appreciate where the budget could be compromised about being able to operate versus how we're incorporating different types of models around staffing or volunteerism to support opening the doors.
So, Ms. Jessup or Mr. Mitchell, I think one of the things that might be helpful to council is just a bit of a breakdown in support of Councillor Kungle's question, because you had identified $850,000 as the annual operating budget, but only $350 of that is staff. So maybe some sense of what the other $500,000 is as you answer Councillor Kungle's question.
Sure. Thank you. Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Kungle. Yes, so as identified in our presentation, the staffing is it's just under 350,000. And we do use volunteers in the library, not right now during the pandemic, but normally we do. And we do, however, have contractual obligations to not use volunteers to conduct union work. So we do have that consideration for sure. But again, we use volunteers as supports. So, and this branch would be no different, that the volunteers would support our programming. They also support things like shelf reading. So making sure the shelves are neat and tidy, that sort of thing. And in terms of a breakdown further of the operating budget, we did try to be as lean as possible. But I will say that we're still looking at some of these numbers a little bit. So one in particular is the cost of the lease. So we put in a figure, but it may be less than that figure. So we still, we've only had very preliminary conversations regarding this lease, and that would still need to be negotiated. So that number is likely to be less. But again, we did budget for what we, that's the top of what we thought it might cost. The other things that we have factored in is 110,000 for library materials. So that's replenishing the collections as new materials come in and things like that we need to purchase. There's additional funds for training. There's additional funds for courier, because that is something that we would be finding ourselves bringing books and other materials from branch to branch. And so that adds an additional cost there. We have costs for maintenance in terms of custodial, building maintenance. We need to pay to keep the lights on and water and all of that stuff. So that's factored in there as well. And just looking at some of the higher level things here, I think that pretty well covers it. There's other additional things like insurance and things like that we've factored in, but it is quite lean, and we have worked really hard in the last few years to look at our staffing model and how can we make this work. We want to provide this service. We want to provide the best library service that we can in Barrie, and use the tax dollars as wisely as we can. So we've really been looking at how we can expand without adding a lot of cost. But of course, there is some cost to expansion. And so we're hoping that council sees this as a fairly lean budget, but if there is a direction to look at it further, of course, we can do that.
Thanks. Councillor Congo.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Jessup. I just want to compliment you on bringing that forward and having seen the previous vision and scale and then the pivot. So thanks for adding that information for those watching tonight and appreciating the ask.
Councillor Natalie Harris.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman, and thank you so much for the presentation. I thought it was great. First, I just want to commend all of you, everyone who works at the library, because I must say, I follow you on Twitter, obviously, and we get posts all the time, but you have really adapted to the restrictions put upon you by COVID-19 in such an amazing way. I think it's important for people to know that the library didn't just, okay, we're going to hopefully do our drop-off services, pick-up services, and get books out there still. You've kind of reinvented yourself in a lot of ways, which is amazing. So one of the things I saw on Twitter the other day was the listening post, and I thought that was great. And it was because of potential negative side effects that happen because of social isolation, which is so true. You had a little table set up and someone who was trained to just chat, and you use, PPE, etc., and everything was safe. I thought that was great, but there's so many examples. I could go on and on of what you've done over this time. You didn't just sit back and wait. You've really proven through your actions that the money that we also provide is really well used, because it really, you demonstrate it on a regular basis. And I think even other agencies and whatever who are trying to look at, you know, how can we reinvent ourselves during COVID-19 should reach out to the Barrie Public Library, because you guys have done a really great job. So my one question is there a possibility to expand? So you're in that one unit. I know they're occupied on both sides, but is there conversation with the owner of the building about if you want to get, you know, expand into a bigger space? Is that possible?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Harris. As Lauren mentioned, we are quite preliminary in these discussions. We're pretty early in the process, but we have discussed the possibility of any future units that would potentially be available in this location. We would be able to look at that and kind of have a first crack at that if that was an option for us. So that has been discussed. And there is limited room for expansion potentially into the outdoor area behind the unit that we're kind of looking at, where we could potentially have a reading garden and some extra outdoor programming space when the weather allowed for that. So there are opportunities with this specific location for expansion. And we are also looking long-term at other opportunities in Hawley for potentially larger locations.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Lehman. Well, I know you all do your homework really well. I think that's great. A great idea to have a garden as well. So that's good to hear that if there's a possibility that you've already had that conversation. I think it's a great location. Also, I mean, the kids can go to the library and you can go grocery shopping and do whatever. It's definitely needed. I really appreciate all of your efforts. Thank you for being such an important component to our city and to everyone here. And I guess you probably know which way I'm leaning, but obviously I'm always open to listening to suggestions from other councillors. And obviously I've been in conversation with Councillor Harvey because it's right on the border of our wards, but I just can't say enough about what you guys do. So guys and girls, so thank you so much.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Lehman, first to Councillor Harvey, thanks for throwing every ward under the sun that said this would service. You know, great sales pitch. Just a quick question. Are you guys a little bit nervous of the safety? Only because I've been to that plaza. It's rammed on the weekends with all the, and you know, kids at the library and stuff. Is that some of a concern? Like, would this be your ideal spot? I know you were looking for 15,000 square feet and you know, there's not much available and stuff, but would a standalone, like other place, you know, with a garden and stuff, like you mentioned the back. Now the back of an industrial place is normally where delivery trucks come. So that's a little bit of a safety concern, I would think, right? Like the grocery store would get all their deliveries through the back alleyway opposed to in the front. So is that something that concerns you?
Jessup.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Thompson. I guess I can speak to the back first. So I've been sort of paying attention to how a lot of restaurants are doing their patios, pop-up patios type of thing during the pandemic. And I've seen some really great ones where they actually build a bit of a wooden slat wall behind. So yes, it is a driveway. I understand that. And at the moment, it definitely looks like a driveway. But I think there are things that we could do to create a safe space where maybe you wouldn't feel like you were in a driveway. Add some plants, add a nice wooden slat wall, some benches and seating. And I think we wouldn't feel as if we were in a driveway. So that's just the sort of my vision for that. In terms of the size of the space and being too busy, to be honest, that does concern me a little, especially after school. I think it's going to be quite busy, but you know, right now during the pandemic, we do have capacity limits in place, and that seems to be working okay. It maybe is something that we could look at. Capacity is this, sorry, we've reached capacity, but I don't actually think that that's necessarily going to be a problem, because the residents that we spoke to are from all different demographics. I think we would have a good steady flow throughout the day. We might have a little blip near the end of the school day where we've got kids coming in, but you know what? They'll see that the computers are all taken and maybe off they'll go. So it will be that hopefully that balanced entrance throughout the day of, you know, more seniors in the morning and those people who are maybe working from the library, that sort of thing. So again, it's something that we can't really say for sure until we get it open.
Follow up there.
Sure, go ahead.
Through you. The 350,000 in staffing, how many new hires would that be?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Thompson. We can be a little bit creative in terms of this and utilizing some of our additional staff that our existing staff that we have now. So we would likely be looking at hiring a branch librarian, and we may need to look at hiring a manager as well as some additional pages. So our pages are our staff who shelve items and do that sort of work with the materials, as well as a summer reading program student. So we are looking at a few additional hires, but we are also able to make use of some of our existing complement at this branch.
Yeah, just follow up, Mayor Lehman. I remember I want to say it was last year, but possibly 2 years ago, that you said that the library could expand without any new hires. And we were talking about, I think when you were asked, I think we were going to put 150,000 in a reserve on the start of funding other libraries in the annex lands and stuff like that. I was just wondering, like, is there, just due to COVID and, you know, lean budgets, is there a possibility that the existing staff, you know, the occupancy numbers are down, where you could basically run this, you know, you have a librarian, an office manager at your other branch, where this would be a satellite where they combine on a, you know, there's lots of corporations that, you know, a manager goes from one site to another. Is that something that's possible? Like, I'm in favor, because I know the work Councillor Harvey's done, and previous to Councillor Harvey, I think even when CAO Prowse and John Broussard were on, they talked of libraries in this area. So, you know, I agree with, you know, it's something the service needs to be in that neighborhood, but just in light of COVID, it's like probably we're timing to expand, you know.
So Lauren,
if you can answer that, staffing.
Yeah, so through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Thompson. So we do, the amount that we've proposed in our preliminary budget is kind of the amount that assumes a full 12 months of 100% operations. So right now, our branches aren't currently open for our full operating hours. So you're right, we can see some savings there, but the amount we've budgeted for is the amount of staffing that we would like to see at a 100% operating branch. So that being said, if we were to move forward in 2021, there's definitely some flexibility in terms of who would be running the branch, who would need to be hired. Everything would be contract to start, as we said, and it would depend on actual operating hours. The other thing that isn't happening currently is that in-person programming, the library has decided not to start that up again, just in light of safety because of COVID-19. So we're doing a lot of virtual programming, but it doesn't take the same resources that the in-person programming would take. So if we get to the point where we're opening a branch and in-person programming is still not happening also, for example, then there's some opportunities for being more lean there too. It's definitely flexibility in that number.
I'll just end by saying thank you, and thank you for taking the time. And we had a brief chat on the phone, and I appreciate you guys taking the time in your presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Jim Harris.
Okay. Thank you, Mary Lee. Maybe a quick question in case I missed something in email to the clerk. There's no ask tonight, correct? It's just a presentation?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Harris. No, there is no ask tonight. It's just the presentation.
Okay.
And no motions can be put forward this evening at council concerning the presentation.
Okay, I thought so. I just wanted to make that clear. Thank you. So on that, through you, Mayor Lehman, to Ms. Jessup. Ms. Jessup, we had a great conversation, and I do appreciate having the chance to speak and understanding being in a similar business where you compete with funds from amongst a variety of good causes and positive additions to a community. Understand how it can be challenging as a library to make your point and stand out amongst a lot of competing priorities. So, and to do that during a pandemic is obviously even more challenging. So I respect the challenge that you put forward to us and the opportunity for our community. Having said that, I'm wondering, and I heard some of the things, and we talked today, had a great conversation, at least I thought it was a great conversation, about some of the opportunities of the library, and even being mindful, and we all do this when we see needs, a little bit of mission creep, and those kind of things happen with good intention. There was mention about gardens. I'm not sure where, if I got that correctly, somebody mentioning about potential of a garden in this area. Is that really part of the library's long-term plan, or is that something that I mishear that?
Ms. Jessup.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Harris. Reading gardens are quite common in public libraries. In fact, our existing two branches each have one. So the downtown reading garden is quite large and it's quite beautiful. You should come and visit it when it's back to spring and summer again. And we are looking at ways that we can develop the outdoor space at Painswick as well. So an aspect of enjoying a book or the newspaper is sitting outside and reading it. So that's really important to us. And maybe it's partly a personal goal as well, but I find some of my best work is done outside. So I think lots of people could probably say that. So that is an aspect of bringing the outdoors in that we would really like to do as well. And one of the library's strategic priorities is to be a green leader. So we are looking at ways that we can encourage environmental learning. So having those opportunities for people who may live in an apartment complex and they don't have that experience with getting their hands into the garden, we want to look at ways that we can do more of that. And it's just another aspect of that learning that the library offers.
Yeah, thank you. And I've shared the book, Your Brain on Nature, with many people. So I understand the impact of nature on overall wellness and even learning and for children. So that's well received. So thank you. Yeah, I just wasn't quite sure gardens. I wanted to be sure, but that makes great sense. The other question I had is even in the sense of long-term, obviously the strip mall is not a place to be able to create reading gardens, I would imagine. Maybe this is a question through you, or maybe it's to you, maybe it's Mayor Lehman to staff. Is the long-term solution, it's not this strip mall, obviously, it's where is the long-term solution for the Holly Library if this is an interim solution? Is it at the Holly Rec Center? Is there opportunity to grow there and combine as we do plan to with Salem and Hewitt's with the rec centers having the libraries attached?
Ms. Jessup.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Harris. The opportunities at the Holly Rec Center have been looked at in the past. I believe 10 years ago it was explored, and at that time it was deemed to be just far too expensive. There's not enough space at the Holly Rec Center, and there's also some infrastructure issues. I think in terms of the electrical, you'd have to check that maybe with city staff to be sure, but there are things there that would prevent adding a library without astronomical expense. We would be far less expensive, I think, to build a standalone building versus attaching ourselves to the Holly Rec Center. So basically with this opportunity, we are trying to get as close to that as we could get without being attached.
Thank you. Yeah, it does. I mean, this location is as mentioned, a very favorable location given the area that's needing to be served. So I think I have more questions, but I got to hold them. I think this is very interesting, and I thank you for your presentation and for your answering my questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Councillor Rittman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. just one question, actually. And thank you very much for a great presentation and for something that is very creative, I think, and a smart approach to the problem that we have in that area. I just want to follow up with Councillor Harris's question. And I understand there's no ask tonight, but what is it that council needs to do to make this happen for you? What is, it's not tonight, but what is your ask going to be some other night?
So through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Ritma, our main ask currently is for council to support the library moving forward with this expansion, whether that were to be a formal motion in the coming weeks, or whether that would be as part of our 2021 operating budget ask in the coming months. That's basically what we're looking for. We're looking for council's support to expand into the Holly area to provide library services in mid-2021. That's kind of formally what we're looking for. Although, as we previously said, there's nothing coming forward tonight at this meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ritma. Any other questions? Councillor Aylwin.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. And thanks for the presentation, Lauren and Austin. It's been pretty amazing to see how fast the library's been able to adapt to, a constantly changing world. Exciting stuff. So I'm wondering if you can speak to, and at the most recent library board meeting, we had a report on it, on the return on investment for libraries. Maybe you can just speak to, the tool that you've been using to come to a number and what that looks like.
Ms. Jessup.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Aylwin. Yes, at the last board meeting, we did present a report to the library board around an economic impact study. This study is undertaken by a number of libraries, and of course I don't have it in front of me, but it goes through lots of we add in lots of data and it spits out a number at us. And so the data that we put in is our return on investment. So, and I'm going to fudge the number because I cannot think of it off the top of my head, but it is around $4 to every $1 that is put in. So that's the return on investment that is established. And the way that it's established is basically the general idea is that if residents were required to pay market price for the things that they are able to borrow from the library, that's the how that is calculated. So it's a very complex spreadsheet that was not developed by me, and so we did present that to the library board, and they did come back and ask for a bit more information in terms of how that number was arrived at. So it's actually not necessarily something that we are promoting quite yet, but if any members of council would like to see a bit more on that, I'm happy to provide that after the meeting.
And just to elaborate a tiny bit through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Aylwin, sure. It looks at things like Lauren mentioned, the borrowing of actual materials from the library, the value that residents get from that, and also the value residents get from attending programming at the library that they would otherwise have to pay for from different organizations, and also the space that's provided to work and the internet that is available at the library. So there's a lot of different things that the library is able to provide that can provide that value to residents.
Thanks, Austin.
Thanks so much for those answers, and I'm excited to see what it looks like in the end. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Owen. Any other questions, members of council? Okay, seeing none, just one from me. I did want to follow up on the question of funding. And actually, I'm going to ask this of our treasurer, Mr. Miller. Craig, a capital lease, as I understand it, is DC eligible. If this were a standalone building, I would assume that we would be able to spend development charge money to build the building. In the case of a lease, I know it has to be for a certain length of time, but has there been a conversation around whether some of those operating costs could in fact become a capital lease and therefore eligible for development charge funding?
Good question, Mr. Lehman. What is eligible is the actual lease costs you can fund from the operating side of it. So it's the cost to pay for salaries and things of that nature are operating or not, but you can lease a facility and pay with it through development charges.
So if the library were able to come to an arrangement for a lease that would qualify, that could come out of that operating cost request of 850, or at least the portion of it that is the lease cost could be funded by development charges rather than tax funding.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I have lots of sort of thoughts and questions around a storefront branch. I mean, I used to live in Ottawa for a few years, and there was a storefront branch of the Ottawa Public Library in the neighborhood that I lived in. I've seen how they function, and certainly, with the Painswick branch, we saw enormous take up. I often think that whatever our assumptions around the interest of our residents in a facility or a service, we're often surprised, sometimes to the upside, sometimes to the downside, as to how many people use it. Certainly the experience with the Painswick branch was a huge upside in the sense that far more memberships, I forgot what the statistic was, but just a huge number. And then I think much more recently during COVID, and several members of council have raised this, if I remember correctly, you had something like 600 new library memberships in the first couple of months of COVID because people use those services. And I would echo Councillor Natalie Harris's compliments on how you've pivoted. So we know there's interest. We also know that when you put a library into a community, the physical space does create more demand. I mean, people go and use it who wouldn't otherwise make a trip downtown or make a trip over to Painswick to use the branch, but they sure would if it was a 2 or 3 minute drive from Ward 7, 6, or 5, as Councillor Harvey noted, or Ward 8 for that matter, Councillor Harris. Now that there will be a new way across the highway, that'll get you to pretty close. I guess so on a process note, maybe to end off, I think you're hearing a lot of excitement and interest, some caution around the cost, especially at this time during COVID. So you indicated, Ms. Jessup, Mr. Mitchell, that you're going to be taking a hard look at that cost and whether or not maybe we could do a capital lease or there are efficiencies to be found to bring that hit down. That would certainly, I'm sure, help the consideration of that proposal moving forward. I guess I would just say in closing that there's this incredible book by Eric Kleinenberg called Palaces of the People about libraries in the future, today and in the future, and the role that they play today as community gathering places and as a way to combat isolation, a place where people can go and have some social interaction through the programming. And that really has nothing to do with books on shelves and everything to do with providing space close to where people live as sort of social infrastructure, human infrastructure. And I will echo the comments that several councillors have made. We appreciate you bringing us a quick start, lower cost version that can maybe finally bring library service to the Southwest, because we certainly know there's been an interest in that going back for several city councils and back to the time where we were considering Painswick. So thank you for your presentation. Deputy Mayor Ward, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Just something you said made me think of a question. I wonder if Mr. Austin or Ms. Jessup, if you talk to libraries and library officials in places like Ottawa about standalone versus libraries in strip malls, advantages or disadvantages, what have been their experience?
Great question, Ms. Jessup.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Ward. Actually, my first library job ever was in a strip mall branch like this. It was in Guelph, and when I was in university, I worked as a clerk, and it was so busy in there. There was a grocery store next door. It was very, very busy. But yes, I have actually spoken with my colleagues in other communities that have branches such as this, and I'm able to reach out to them for lots of advice, including looking at a lease and what would be perhaps fair, things to that nature. But it really is one of those things that is so common in communities because it's the convenience factor. Lots of people will use the library, but only if it's easy. right? So it has to be convenient. You know, we could have looked for that 15,000 square foot location, but we would have been put out into an industrial area where people would have still had to drive, and we maybe wouldn't have had that that walkable community feel. So that's really what we're hoping for with this location, is that we get, you know, we can be one of those anchor tenants in this plaza that just brings people in and creates that sense of community.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Ward. CAO Pros, you look like you might have something you wish to contribute, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I took from members of council's questions concern around the process. And I just want to let council know that as part of the 2021 budget, the library's request will be part of that for council's deliberation and setting of priorities. So if anybody was wondering about next steps and whether it required an item, it will already be in front of you as part of your deliberation for the 2021 budget.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And we look forward to that coming forward. Thank you very much again for the presentation tonight, both of you, and for the work of our volunteer library board. And of course, the work that's been done to both reintroduce or reopen the service and manage during COVID. I really do appreciate what our library has been able to do to continue to offer service and offer new services to people during a tough time. So thank you very much for tonight. And we'll look forward to seeing that come forward as part of the budget in the coming weeks. Okay, that brings us, members of council, to inquiries of staff. Deputy Mayor Ward, do you have any inquiries of staff? Members of council, any inquiries of staff? Seeing none, announcements. Deputy Mayor Ward, any announcements?
I have none.
Members of council, Councillor Kungle, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a couple of announcements I wanted to share. So to start with, you might notice I'm wearing a purple scarf. So I'm sharing an announcement that for those of you not aware, that the month of November in Ontario is Women Abuse Prevention Month. So this is the Wrapped in Courage campaign. You may see individuals wearing purple scarves or purple ties. So during this month, everyone across Ontario is invited to participate in showing abused women across the province that they have our support. Every 6 days in Canada, a woman is killed by her partner or someone known to her. In addition, the number of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls continues to rise and is estimated to exceed over 4,000 women. So the Wrapped in Courage campaign is an initiative where you can show your support, and that support goes directly to the Women and Children's Shelter of Barrie. So if you're looking for more information, you can find that through the Women's Advocacy Council or through the Women and Children's Shelter of Barrie. Yeah, by all means, if anyone has any questions, happy to support getting access to those resources. But I did want to take a moment to highlight that happening this month, and likely many related announcements to come throughout the month of November into December. My
Yes,
second, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay.
No, I was just going to mention, Councillor Kungle, we will be providing video and some other support to that excellent campaign, and I have my purple tie.
I heard, thank you. Yeah. The health unit has a survey out. I wanted to draw some attention to this, especially coming off of great conversation with representatives from the library and dialogue around City Council around the impacts of COVID. And so if you haven't seen it yet, I would invite members of council and anyone that has seen this to participate, but also to post on your social media channels. So the health unit has a survey out to learn more about financial, mental, social, and physical impacts of COVID-19 on residents and families, not just in Barrie, but across the county. So it is an anonymous survey with no identifiable information collected. It is something that is open now, and the purpose of it is to actually inform the health unit around programs and services that may be adapted or improved, but also around their own advocacy to political decision makers at all levels for change. So the survey is open until Friday, November 27th. I have posted that on my social media sites, and I'll share that broadly if you don't have it at hand for anyone that would like to also distribute that. And then if you've got questions about it, you can also call Health Connection Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 4:30 p.m. at 705-721-7520. And so lastly, I did want to announce my intention to the following. So coming off the heels of many updates over the past weekend, one in which I thought was the lovely confirmation of the incumbent Camilla Harris. And so on that, as we look at women in politics and seeing that lovely addition to the US VP role, I am going to invite members of council and individuals to start the conversation. So our next municipal election is in 2022. I don't think it's too early to start, whether it be to ask her if she's interested, or anyone that you think would like to know more about what it's like to hold a role at council, to run for an opportunity to serve the city of Barrie at City of Council. So I'm seeing a really great friendly campaign currently activated between the city of Calgary and Edmonton. And so in Alberta, their municipal election happens in 2021, and they have a friendly challenge to see how many women they can actually encourage and support to run. So while we are some time out, again, I would say, let's start the conversation, and you'll hear more from me in the new year about opportunities for dialogue. And I would invite you to ask me any questions you have, and to see if any members of council would actively reach out to any individuals that you might think should consider it. And that's everything. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Kungl. I appreciate all three of those announcements, and certainly something that is an ongoing effort at FCM, where I had the privilege to serve in the last year on the board to try and encourage and reduce barriers for women to enter municipal politics. It is still, unfortunately, the level of government that has the lowest level of elected officials of women on elected councils, and that is certainly something that FCM has made a priority, and also AMO. So lots of resources are also out there and online to support those conversations. Councillor Aylwin, announcement.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. It feels weird announcing this day because it felt like a summer day out, and it was beautiful, very weird weather. But as we know, the Santa Claus parade is canceled this year, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a lot going on in downtown Barrie over the holiday season. There's still lots to do in downtown Barrie, including exploring the new Dunlop streetscape while checking out all of the things that are planned for Noella in the city. So that includes the Rotary Festival of Trees in Meridian Place and in Heritage Park, festive window displays in downtown businesses, the Noella tree and wreath lot in support of Haas Simcoe, and the well-known and loved Holly Days. So residents can stay up to date on all things Noella by visiting noella.downtownbarrie.ca and by following the Downtown BIA on social media at Downtown Barrie. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Owen. If you think that's weird, I've got the message about not parking on the street when it snows, because that really feels relevant today. Unfortunately, it probably will be relevant like in a couple of days, because if you don't like the weather in November, wait 10 minutes. Any other announcements, members of council? Okay, seeing none, I will go through my raft. I'll start by saying we are proclaiming the month of November as Crohn's and Colitis Awareness Month in the city of Barrie. Important notes about Remembrance Day, as this is the day after tomorrow. First of all, the first thing I want to say is please recognize Remembrance Day. Please continue to remember our veterans. Take the time, whether it's at 11 o'clock or at some point during the week, to remember those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice, and those particularly as well who continue to serve our country in uniform. It will look quite a bit different this year, Remembrance Day, but the first thing, of course, and foremost thing is wear a poppy. I know a lot of people have been asking about how can you get those. There are still locations in person where you can pick one up. You will be able to find them, but that is something that you can do. And also the Legion is selling masks, which are red with camouflage with Legion on them, and that supports the Poppy Fund. So the Legion really does need our help this year with the Poppy Fund, so please do support them. Ways to pay your respects from home. Our Legion branch will be hosting a private ceremony that is going to be live streamed on CTV Barrie and Rogers TV. We are, however, reminding people not to go to the cenotaph at 11 o'clock. There won't be a ceremony there. Please do visit our cenotaph. Take the opportunity to go at some point, but we don't want folks to gather at 11 o'clock because we know there will be some who come looking for the annual ceremony, and we are very concerned about the vulnerability of a large group gathering. So for obvious reasons, many of our veterans are of an advanced age and are not able to, are particularly vulnerable to COVID. So that is the reason why there is no ceremony at the cenotaph at 11 o'clock. So please don't come looking for that. Please watch it though online, because it is very, very important that we not allow this time to pass, even though we can't have the in-person ceremony without remembering our fallen. The city today launched an online map of all the streets across Barrie that are named in honor of local soldiers. If you haven't had a chance to check this out, please do. You can click on the poppy that is on the street name on the map and find out some information about the soldiers that was named after, including occupation, rank, the memorial location, and so forth. Also, as you travel downtown and along our waterfront, you'll notice a series of Remembrance Day banners on display that are there to pay respect to our local veterans. Of course, there will be national events as well. So please do take the opportunity, whether it's going online for one of the ceremonies or checking out some of these resources. Please, in lieu of the quarter you might put in a poppy box 10 times as you have them fall off when the seatbelt pulls them off. This year, please consider a slightly larger donation if you're able to, and continue to wear a poppy as a sign of respect for the men and women who serve for our freedom. This is kind of cool. The city is selling activity kits to keep kids busy at home on the upcoming PA Day. So November 20th, there's a PA Day. The kits are known as Boredom Buster boxes. They're available because of generous donations from the Barrie Fire and Emergency Service, Barrie Public Library, Barrie, notice I waited till after the presentation to make that announcement. The Barrie Public Library, the Barrie Police Service, and Domino's. Thank you all to those departments and organizations who supported us. The boxes are $5 each. They're full of fun and engaging activities like coloring sheets, temporary tattoos, activity books, and more. You can order your box online and you pick it up at one of our rec facilities during select dates and times. So all the information is there on barrie.ca. If you are interested in ordering a $5 Boredom Buster box, and thank you to our supporters who have helped us to be able to offer those for $5. Yesterday, Sunday, November 8th, was World Town Planning Day. For the past 71 years around the world, this has celebrated the contributions of professional planners in the field of community planning. The City of Barrie, of course, employs a number of registered professional planners, and there are many planners working in our community and with our partner agencies. One project our planning team, of course, is currently working on is the new official plan and urban design guidelines. Those two documents are open for public review and comment until December 22nd. For more information on that, you can go to buildingbarrie.ca. A couple of notes just about the Dunlop Street beautification project. Of course, we had a tremendous day on Saturday with Open Air Dunlop. Really great that our business community was able to take advantage of that. Many of them pivoted quickly to be able to open up, have some outdoor seating, or offer some specials for the day, and a tremendous turnout on the all-new Dunlop Street on Saturday. We are expecting the project to wrap up in late November and all of Dunlop Street to reopen by the end of the month. Until the construction is complete, Toronto Street and 5 Points will remain closed. The detours are in place. Mary Street will remain two ways, and of course Maple remains open. There is 2-hour free parking at the Chase McEachern Way lots and the Maple Avenue Central parking lots until construction is complete. There is more information about that on the city's website. We are also conducting a new round of consultation with local residents and businesses around the recovery plan. That was approved by council tonight. We are attempting to contact again various sectors who are particularly affected by COVID, and we are welcoming ideas from both the business and local residents on how we can assist, whether it's with regulation or an innovative new program to assist with economic recovery. The first virtual public consultation session is tomorrow, November 10th at 1 p.m. Buildingbarrie.ca is the website where you can sign up and participate in that virtual consultation. I know that there are many people out there with great ideas, so please, we want to hear as many of them as possible to help our local businesses recover. The city is also currently developing a community energy and greenhouse gas reduction plan. You can get involved in that on buildingbarrie.ca. The survey for that plan is open until November 15th. We are also accepting nominations right now for the Mayor's Innovation Awards. We have received a number, but we are those nominations are open for about another 5 weeks till December 17th, and winners will be announced at our online award ceremony in February of 2021. That website is investbarrie.ca/innovation awards. Last, just a note on COVID, as we did see record case numbers over the weekend province-wide. A reminder that in the yellow level that we are currently in as the city of Barrie, as Simcoe Muskoka, on the advice of the health unit, the gathering limits are the same as they have been for some time, 10 people for an indoor event, 25 for an outdoor event. But the advice from the health unit is to shrink your close contacts as much as possible to only those within your own household, and think carefully about what you go out for and where. Parents should screen children for symptoms of COVID-19 every day before they leave for school. And of course, there is more information on the website as to how you can protect yourself and others, simcoemuskokahealth.org. That's all my announcements. Deputy Mayor Ward, the bylaws.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that leave be granted to introduce the following bills, and these bills be read a first, second, and third time this day and finally passed. Bills 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, and 109.
Thank you very much. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that leave be granted to introduce the following bills, and these bills be read a first, second, and third time this day and finally passed. Bill 100, bills 100 through 109. Comments or questions on the bylaws? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor of the bylaws, please indicate. Are any opposed? None. That carries. Deputy Mayor Ward, confirmation.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that leave be granted to introduce the following bill, and this bill be read a first, second, and third time this day and finally passed. Bill 110, the confirmation bylaw.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that leave be granted to introduce the following bill, and this bill be read a first, second, and third time this day and finally passed. Bill 110, the confirmation bylaw. Comments or questions? Seeing none, those in favor of the bylaw, please indicate. Are any opposed? None. That carries unanimously. Can I have a motion to adjourn City Council, please? Councillor Natalie Harris, seconded by Councillor Riepma. All those in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you very much. We will see you next Monday for General Committee.